All right, it is 3 o'clock. We will get started with our webinar. Thank you all for coming, and I'm sure we'll have people joining in and asking questions. You should see that on the group chat, there is a place for you to write chat messages. If you want to keep your microphone muted because you've got dogs, cats, children, whatever, that would be great. And thank you very much for joining us. And we're going to be talking about interactive storytelling from the perspective of our storytelling engine, which is called StoryStylus. And so One More Story Games has developed a hopefully simply easy to use interactive storytelling software. So the idea is that you use the software StoryStylus, create your story games, you publish them, and you can share them or you can publish them and earn royalties. So we're not only the software provider, but we're also the digital publisher of content too. Good morning from New Zealand. All right, that's kind of exciting. We've got people from all over the world here. And so we're going to go over what are the core components that you need to think about when you're creating your narrative. So I think quite a few of you are the more traditional writers and may not have had experience with creating the narrative design aspect of games. So for those of you, I think Michelle, I briefly chatted with Michelle. She's a traditional writer doing some interesting genre. We can talk about that in a little bit. Shay is working on a game design degree, diploma studies. And Miranda, I'm not sure about you. Kate, I know you're a traditional writer. And Lisa, I'm assuming you're also in traditional writing as well. So thank you all for joining us. And I will be doing some screen sharing so that you can see some of the things that we're talking about. And I'd love to know, just by way of introduction, of the people that are on the call right now, how many of you have gone to play one of our games maybe in like the last month as opposed to like a year ago? Okay, so Kate says she writes graphic novels, and Miranda is online learning designer. Okay, so like the ed tech space, it sounds like, which I think, it's interesting. I was just saying prior to getting on the webcast that the StoryStylus itself is kind of like a Swiss Army knife, and with the Swiss Army knife, we can do a lot of different things, and we're going to be pitching to Dragon's Den, which is like the equivalent of Shark's Tank. How do we sell them on that? Well, to give you a sense of what our Swiss Army knife can do, one, I think most people will know us because we can create interactive narrative games. And those are the stories that you can see on our website right now. Two, we're working with kids aged 12 and up in elementary schools, at libraries, middle schools, and soon in high schools. So we're engaging kids and also adults to create their own game content. We're also working with tourism to possibly gamify small cities. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And the reason I'm talking about those different aspects is, like, somebody who's creating a graphic novel has already a more visual understanding of interactive storytelling than somebody who just writes short stories or novels. And when I say just, I mean typically that's what they're writing. And so we can do a lot of things with StoryStylus. And it looks like, thanks for writing your comments in there, that helps. So we have some people who've been playing our games recently. And the reason I ask recently is, for those of you who met us maybe a year and a half ago, a year ago, our program, we have been continually improving StoryStylus for the last 2 years. So we've moved from alpha into beta, and beta essentially means that it's a stable software build. There are very minimal bugs, and we're continuing to implement new features into the games. So what is a story game? For those of you who've already played, you have a sense of it. It's kind of like a graphical choose your own adventure. And we're trying to be very clear that it's in many different genres. For example, a year and a half ago, our website was all branded mysteries because we were focused on mysteries. Mysteries are actually the #1 genre of casual games on Facebook, for example, and 30 million people a month play mystery hidden objects games. Those are the kinds where it'd be like, oh, find the coffee mug, find the hairband, find the nose. They're very simplistic storytelling, if there even is a story. So it's, to me, I call it hide and seek. I think that there could be a lot more storytelling in that. But mystery, look at the number one TV shows that are on TV. It's mysteries. The most popular films these days tend to be like the superhero comic book films. But mysteries are huge. And why are they huge? Because half the people who play games right now, superhero mysteries. Yeah, Shay, you do superhero mysteries. I think that you would be like, you've got it rocking. And so what the games industry has seen in the last 5 years is you have more and more and more women who are playing. And right now with casual game space, it's more than 50% women playing casual games. And so there's a huge opportunity, and women want something different. Like, I don't know about you ladies, or gentlemen that might be watching this later, I play Candy Crush. I just spent $6 on it earlier today. It's the first time in 6 months. I figured they earned it. But I believe that I believe that there needs to be space in the casual game scene for storytellers. So the fact that we have so many women on this webinar right now, I want you to know that, so we've got romance. There's some sci-fi right there on our website, in our story games. There's cyberpunk. We've got stories that are being written by Aboriginal and Indigenous women that are coming out. We have the very first deaf video game that's coming out later this year.
The games are coming out. The authors themselves are not coming out.
We embrace the LGBTQ community as well.
But I'm just saying,
it's diversity.
Don't get the wrong idea.
You know, we are so married. Yes. So the idea is that there's a lot of opportunity to create. So if you're writing romance or if you're writing cyberpunk erotica, we are also developing and delivering. We are developing a separate website and a separate company that will still use StoryStylus, but will deliver the interactive romance and erotica. For those that you are familiar or know children's authors, there is a separate portal that's in the works right now for later this year. So our job really is to find writers who are really great storytellers, help them navigate through StoryStylus, which we're going to show you briefly, and help you tell stories in a different medium, and
go from linear to the branching.
And so to go from linear storytelling into branching storytelling, and we'll show you what that looks like. So I would love to know if you want to just leave a comment in there what genre that you guys are most wanting to create or interested in. Like, for example, Bonnie Burton is one of the ladies that is writing a really cool story for us. It is a 1950s detective noir set in San Francisco, where when the detective sees or smells
with a Cthulhu
blood
background. Let's not reveal the punchline.
Oh, okay,
yet. Is that good?
You know what? There's Cthulhu elements in there, so we're quite excited about that. So there's a lot of, if you're coming to this thinking, I'm the words person and I'm not the visual person, we are working with, and we have a number of people, our artist interns, and they're working with us to partner up with the stronger storytellers so that we can create the content that we can then publish and sell on your behalf. So why don't we take a second? Let me just look at my... So we've got noir and sci-fi, alt history. Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right. Well, thank you. And Shay's going to do superhero mysteries, I know, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So let's talk about the building blocks of storytelling. When we talk to like the 10-year-olds, obviously we're talking at a different level. What are the primary storytelling blocks? We've got people, places, things, events, conversation.
Relations.
And relations. So the how do people relate to each other in games? And those are the basic things that you need to know when it comes to creating your content in StoryStylus. Do you want to, should I take them through StoryStylus, or maybe we should do the story flow graph first?
Sure.
All right, Blair, I'm going to let Blair talk for a little bit. Okay. I'm going to do the sharing screen. So, do-do. So do you
want to bring over the...
Okay. No, I've got this.
Oh, you've got this.
Yes. Okay, so what we have here is a PDF, which I'll share the link with all of you in an email afterwards.
On the...
Yep, this is...
The recording, okay.
Can you all see this? Somebody say yes? Can you see the linear story flow? Anyone?
See, this is what I was...
Ooh, yeah, they can see it.
They can see it. Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, so Blair, take it away. Talk about linear.
So, I mean, typically when you're looking at a book or a film, you're looking at something that's very linear. It has a start, it has an end, while the narrative itself may have flashbacks and maybe even flash forwards if you're a Lost fan. The idea here is that it generally proceeds in a sequential order from beginning to end. So that's where media was up until the rise of computers to sort of handle, being able to make choices, or even something like a role-playing game or theater project or something like that. Now, what we're trying to show here is that there's still a linearity here. If you can sort of see that there tends to be a central thread and that could be one extra way that you add branching to a story. In some cases, you could have a choice that it's the end of the story, or you keep going. Yeah, so that would be one way in which you could sort of progress from something like this to something like this, where even in some cases where you make a choice and the story ends, although that tends to be not as satisfactory. We'll get into some other branches that are a little broader from there, but you can sort of get the idea that it's still the flow of the story, but there might be different choices where it leads to a different path, but ultimately it loops back into the central theme here, the central storyline. We mentioned the loop here as well because this is an example of something, say, if you were in like a Groundhog Day situation, or some other games like to use situations like this where you're trying to solve a mystery, and if you don't solve it, then it loops back to the beginning and you try again. So this is just to sort of give you ideas, and even some training simulations will do this as well, so that you keep learning until you get it right. Like, say, like landing a plane. I like my pilots to know how to land a plane and all that, But where we start to get really interesting now is further down here into really a branching and a much more open story flow. And this is, with StoryStylus, you can do all kinds of different branches. It's just how much work do you want to do and how much planning can you do for your story and play what if with your characters. Well,
not only that, thinking about the interactivity from your audience's perspective, there are going to be people who use StoryStylus to create a visual linear story, and there's nothing wrong with that. Their audience may enjoy that, but what we're hoping is that a lot of writers are going to want to think about interactivity. Is there something that's clickable? Am I supposed to click on something to discover something? Do I talk to a character? Do I need to win them over, woo them? How does that impact the outcome of the story? So please continue.
Yeah, no, what we're just thinking about now is just the ways that you can take your standard linear story and think sort of in different directions in that way. So going back to sort of this gauntlet idea, there is this notion that you can sometimes be railroaded in a story, that you present choices, but ultimately they go to the same place. So, and there you're giving an illusion of choice, but that can be just as interesting and just as fun in terms of playing through an interactive an interactive story in that way. And really, there's no good or bad necessarily in this. It's just try different things and see what works with your narrative.
Like, for example, in the game that we have called Hard Vacuum Lullaby, this one right here on our website, there are, from the moment that you start the game, you have a choice to either obey orders and maintain radio silence, or you break radio silence and you help somebody that's in distress. From that choice point, that then determines
the whole story changes.
The whole story changes from that point, and you'll have one of 8 endings. By choosing one of those,
that first choice,
it now narrows it down, and you're only going to be able to have one of 4 endings. So that's one of the things that you could have a story that just has one ending, or you can create stories that have multiple endings.
Absolutely.
So we won't go too much into detail into this because I think you get the point.
You get the idea.
But, this is the complex story flows. These are something that like a very experienced game narrative designer would create, where there's a series of tasks or a series of triggers or events, requirements that need to be met before the player can unlock the next series. So
this tends to be more what's called an open world environment. So imagine that you're dropped into this world and there's several activities that you can do. And by choosing to do certain activities versus others, that progresses the story in a different direction.
One of the games that we were working on that's currently in the hopper is there's a crime scene in the very beginning, and there's a little note that pops up that says, find 6 things at the crime scene, find 6 clues at the crime scene, and then that will trigger the conversation with the detective. And so really that's just behind the scenes in StoryStylus. It's looking to have met those conditions. Do you have all 6 clues? Then that conversation can happen.
I just want to show one other example here, and that is the tree, where for each choice it just continues to branch and branch and branch and branch. And these are certainly very interesting, but it's a lot of work to do them. And while in StoryStylus you might find that easy to do, easier, but it does require a bit of thought to sort of plan some of this stuff out. But we're going to start easy, and we'll go from there.
And it also might not be as fun for your audience if it's just a straight up, choose your own adventure book, pick your path. We're trying to do something a little bit more complex than that. So
these are on the website, and we'd encourage you to sort of have a look around and see just what's...
I'll send the link out, and for those that are watching the video on YouTube later, the link will be included in the show liner notes. Okay. I guess they call that.
Okay. So I'll let you back.
Okay, so I will go back to the Googles. Stop.
Hopefully turn that off.
There we go. It's very...